A very busy first week for the Trump administration. Yesterday, the president signed a series of executive orders, one of which focuses on the extreme vetting of refugees and immigrants from terror-plagued countries like Iraq and Syria. The president says he wants to keep radical Islamic terrorists out of the United States.
It's countries that have tremendous terror, and it's countries that people are going to come in and cause us tremendous problems. Our country has enough problems without allowing people to come in who, in many cases or in some cases, are looking to do tremendous destruction. We are excluding certain countries, but for other countries, we're going to have extreme vetting.
Joining me now, Zahra Bilo, Executive Director for the Council on American Islamic Relations, the San Francisco chapter, joins us live from there. Zahra, good to have you with us. First, how do you see the message that Donald Trump is sending with the signing of this executive order? What do you think that message is?
Thanks so much for having me, Ayman. Honestly, the message feels like national security theater. They're targeting a number of countries where we haven't seen terrorist attacks happening in the United States connected to those countries. And still, he pushes forward this rhetoric of this makes America safer. In reality, what it is a Muslim ban.
So let me ask you this, Zahra. Some people are looking at this, though, and they're saying those countries are failed states. They don't have a system of governance in place, not really effective governments. That's why they're taking this measure. We heard from a former Republican Congresswoman earlier saying that this is a security measure, not a ban on the rest of the Muslim world.
So, of course, keep in mind the context, which was discussed earlier. A number of these countries are places that we've destabilized. We've participated in the bombing of these countries. Nonetheless, the people that are coming to the United States from these countries are visiting, they're working, they're learning, they're wanting to be a part of the American fabric. They are not committing harm against the United States. There's no indication that they are. And so what this does is it targets people who want to be a part of the American fabric and says, no, based on your faith and where you come from, you can't be trusted.
Explain to us how this may, from your perspective, undermine the very objective that it's trying to do, which is to make Americans more safe and more secure. Do you see a way by doing this, by this executive order, that in fact it has an adverse effect on Americans here and Americans abroad?
Sure. You know, I would say two things about that. One is that it gives us a false sense of security by targeting people who aren't committing terrorist attacks in the United States. That's what makes us less safe, because we're not using our very limited resources effectively. The other thing, of course, that it does is it entrenches the ISIS narrative, which is America is at war with Islam and Muslims, right? So it gives strength to the argument they're putting forward, which many of our past leaders, despite bad policy decisions, have at least been able to counter through their words. Here, Donald Trump is effectively saying it's us versus them.
What are the legal challenges that your organizations and others plan on undertaking over the next several weeks, in particular to this issue and others that may be on your radar?
Keep in mind that the executive orders were published. The final ones were published just less than 24 hours ago, and so the legal analysis is ongoing. The top priority for lawyers right now is helping people navigate whether or not they should come back to the U.S., whether or not they should leave, and how they could handle being stuck if they're at an airport. Beyond that, the questions that are being looked at is, you know, how do we push back against this? How do we protect the rights of Americans and visitors? And so we're going to see a number of different strategies deployed to push back against this effort.
Yeah, and we already know that universities like Princeton universities have already asked their students and staff to defer travel overseas because they just can't make sense of what all of this means for them. All right, Zahra Bilo, Executive Director of the Bay Area chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations, thank you very much for joining us this Saturday afternoon. Well, you're looking at live pictures right now of JFK Airport here in New York City. People continue to protest President Trump's executive order that effectively bans refugees from 7 predominantly Muslim countries. That order has prompted several lawsuits. The ACLU is part of one of them. We're going to be joined by one of the leaders of that group minutes from now. Stay with us.